Well, hello again, Florida Southern Moccasins, and welcome to week 2 of Esports Digital Marketing and Consumer Engagement. And I'll have to beg your forgiveness for this one because we're going to be talking about a lot of geeky things today. And at least the perspective I take is that you, as aspiring MBAs, hopefully either CEOs at some point or CXOs in the interim, are going to have to deal with the nerds. You're going to have to deal with the nerds. And while you don't need to understand completely what they are doing when they are creating the code to affect what it is you want, you will need to understand the language, the nomenclature. And so we're going to be discussing a lot of that today. But it's all in the service of digital marketing and consumer engagement. So let me share my screen. And once again, there's my smiling face. Now let's get right down to it. Week 2. We're going to continue to slice and dice the various aspects of digital content management. You'll understand the motivational differences between content management and knowledge representation. They are two different things. You will understand the software programming used to create digital content management, because again, it is all coded. You'll understand what is meant by metadata, and metadata is something that's very big, and you're going to need to have at least some proficiency in understanding the terms. You'll understand the variety of eSport website template designs. That's an indication to how things have improved so much, in that if you want to go into esports, or really if you want to create any kind of company, there are a host of design templates that are available via the internet. So you really don't have to be that concerned about building your own website from scratch, okay? And you will understand content modularity. The whole, pardon me, the whole dynamic of channels, publishers, leagues, events, and tournaments. Of course, we're going to do this at a fairly superficial level, but you'll understand. So these are the topics that we're going to discuss: content management, knowledge representation, the nature of XML programming language, RDF, OWL, and semantic web standards, tournament management software, scoring methodologies, and channels, publishers, leagues, events, and teams. Okay, so it's a jam-packed week 2. Again, we're focusing on content management systems, and presumably you're either going to be the administrator of a content management system, or someone who is overseeing a content management system that is governed, that is managed by someone else. And again, the importance of this is that it is through the content management system that the website, the web ranking, the content, the data, the various domain, all of that is part and parcel of that responsibility. So when we see PDF, we mean portable document format. That's an Adobe product. When we talk about HTML, we're talking about hypertext markup language. And again, that's one of the coding tools, one of the coding languages that is used to create the content you want. Now, I think it's very important that we always come back to, where's the money, okay? So if we look at content distribution for game publishers, what we notice is that there are 3 types of content that game publishers are concerned about. And frankly, that a streamer is concerned about, or that anyone who has an online business is concerned about. And one of those is, pardon me, I have this cold that just won't go away. But trust me, I go to the doctor. It's just a cold. Okay. Earned media. Okay. Earned media means that praise and that money you've earned from reviews, from mentions, from shares, from reposts, etc. Paid media is precisely what that says. Okay. That's going to be primarily advertising. And that advertising is coming in by pay-per-check, paid influencers, social media ads, paid content promotion, et cetera, et cetera. And then there is owned media. And owned media is precisely what that says. That's proprietary content. If it's proprietary content, that means it's the content on your website is yours. The content on your mobile site is yours. Your blog is yours. Your social media channels are yours. And then you can see where in this Venn diagram, things come together, okay? So earned media and paid media come together with you have sharing and engagement with paid promotion, all right, where you are able to leverage owned, earned, and paid media for a comprehensive marketing strategy. And so what we're going to do is delve a little bit more deeply into what these three forms of content are. So digital content management encompasses the storage, the organization, the indexing, and the curation of the digital content used by an individual or an organization. And as we said, this digital content takes many forms. What kind of forms? Live streams, text files, documents, graphics, images, animations, audio, and video files. Those are all the components of a digital content management system, okay? Again, three types of digital media: earned, owned, and paid. Earned media is media an individual or company gets through what is traditionally referred to as word of mouth, albeit in the online environment. Chat, for example, chat commentary is a good example of earned media. And as we've touched upon with Twitch and Facebook, followers of various esports athletes on those sites, if you're on Facebook, you can buy stars. If you're on Twitch, you buy bits. Each one of those has the value literally of 1 cent, 1 penny. But you're able to award them, to distribute them to the streamer of your choice. So every time that streamer gets 100 stars, that streamer has earned $1. Or 100 bits on Twitch, that individual has earned $1. And it's important to keep in mind that while you're there probably going, golly, these are small sums of money, the answer is you're right. These are small sums of money, which is why for traditional news outlets, the transmigration to digital media has been, for most of them, disastrous. It's disastrous because the charge they are able to apply to a vendor for an ad that appears on a screen is much less than it is for traditional media, newspaper or magazine or what have you. The difference being, of course, you can track it online. And when you track it online, you realize how few eyeballs actually set upon that ad. And that's why the value is so low, okay? Owned media. This is the content the individual or company permanently owns. Again, what are the examples? You own your website, you own your blog, any of your YouTube channels, social media pages, or anything else the individual or the company controls via its name. So, for example, if it was Don Marinelli's vlog, I own that. If it's Don Marinelli's blog, I own that. If it's Don Marinelli's website, I own that. If I've got various channels to espouse my brilliance or whatever on YouTube channels, I own that. So that is owned media. Paid media's aim is to increase awareness of your brand. Okay, examples include AdWords, which is what is used by Google, social media links, advertisements in portals for related content and information segments. So that paid media goes both ways. It'll be people paying you to put their social media link on or to advertise their product or service, or it could very well be you paying them to do the exact same thing. But those are the three types of digital content management media. And again, when we take a look at basically the marketing ideology and all that, you've got content and the engaging experience, and they are symbiotic. They go back and forth. You want to create, you want to be captured, you want it to store it, you want to process it, you want to be able to map it, publish it, share it, and continue this over and over again. And that's where you get a market ideology as well as a business process automation and an enterprise content management system as well. So it's all symbiotic. Okay, now let's look at the differences between content management and knowledge management, because there's a huge difference between the two. Content creation is specifically for a few people only. Content cannot be created by everyone. Although with the democratization of acting that has occurred thanks to interactive digital media, practically everybody thinks they are a content creator, which is why there's so much bad content out there. Now, creating knowledge is more liquid compared to content creation. How so? Well, knowledge can be created by anyone and everyone and still be equally useful and valuable to and for others. Knowledge is structured in such a manner that it can separate the problems and the questions that are asked from the atmosphere or the environment where these problems and or questions originated or occurred. You can almost think of FAQs as a form of that, right? Knowledge underlines the cause of the situation. It gives answers or resolution. It also gives exposure to other topics and events related to it. When we start to talk about Reddit, for example, we will note one of the things that what gets the most eyeballs on Reddit is a question. If a question is posed to the general public on Reddit, it gets the most responses because people like to respond to questions. In short, knowledge tells you what is to be done in what situation and or condition, and how is it supposed to be done. Okay, that's what knowledge management is. Okay, content management primarily adds, as they say, veneer to structure. Content only gives the finishing touch. Conversely, knowledge management is not just about the veneer, it is the entire structure. And the content veneer is useless without the knowledge. Okay, so there's really a hierarchy here where first and foremost, you've got to have the knowledge, right? You've got to have that information that tells you what is to be done in what situation, condition, and how it is supposed to be done. And then the content, how it is veneered, how it is presented is very important. You know, I think a good example would be in cockpits of jet planes. Okay, I'm an Air Force veteran. Okay, you know, if you're suddenly exceeding particular limits, the knowledge is presented to you in a very harsh tone or a very demonstrative voice. There's no concern there that it's going to upset you or that you might get, you might get hurt by the tone that's being used, because first and foremost is getting that knowledge. You're too low, you're too high, you're too fast, you're not trimmed, etc. Okay, so knowledge is more important than the overall content here. Now, knowledge underlines the cause of the situation. It gives answers or resolution, but it can also give exposure to other topics and events related to it. That's one of the reasons why online, if you ask a particular question, could be out of the blue about anything, however the answer is given usually includes a link or insight into other topics and events that are related to it. For example, Quora. I don't know how many of you use Quora, Quora, which is a basic, I've got a question about history, I've got a question about life, I got a question about, and Quora is a very public forum where where questions are posed and knowledge is provided. And sometimes it is provided with a nice veneer, other times it's simply laid out there, okay? Content management, again, only adds a veneer to the structure. It gives it the finishing touch. Now, very often that finishing touch is extremely important. That's what makes something more likable, something more enjoyable, something more soothing, you name it. Okay. Now let's talk about modular content. Modular means employing or involving a module or modules as the basis of design or construction. Modular building blocks, okay? Concrete blocks, bricks, keep that in mind. Content is made up of distinct, separate chunks of writing. And much like constructing a building, these chunks can be assembled to make a longer piece of content or left as shorter pieces by themselves. Content creators can combine various chunks together in different ways, resulting in new pieces of content from the modules. Now, the important part is that a huge amount of content can be created from the same modules, making one set of information stretch as far as possible. On video games, when you have a limitless horizon, okay, or when you have a persistent world, it goes on forever and ever. There is no horizon there. I mean, you could roam this thing forever. It is recreating specific modules. It is simply repeating specific modules, so that even though these modules are set, a huge amount of content can be created from them in the form of rocks, stones, trees, streams, you name it, okay? Now, what does it take to put together a modular content strategy? Pay attention. It means approaching your writing very differently during the creation process. One of the first questions you have to ask yourself is, what exactly does a module of my content look like? A module should be something which is large enough to exist by itself, but small enough to be applicable to a variety of channels, audiences, and contexts. One module that you're all familiar with, even if you aren't aware of it, are the uniforms of your teams, all right? Are the logos of your teams, are the skins on the particular player that you're using in Call of Duty or one other game, okay? Those are all modular content that you are using for a particular purpose to enhance your experience therein, okay? Module first. Think about what each of your target personas would want to know about your esports content. For example, someone who works in the esports industry might want to know about the recent changes in team composition. And there's one thing about esports, team composition changes like a bolt of lightning. Someone with a broadcasting background might want to know the impact select shoutcasters has on tournament viewership. Each of these topics could form modules of a longer overview and be split off into their parts when targeting a specific persona. I think another place where you can see modules clearly at work is in gambling, right? Sports gambling is all built on modules, right? The module will be how fast so-and-so runs, how far so-and-so can throw, how much does so-and-so catch, how many baskets does so-and-so make from the court, okay? Module second thing, break down content of a potentially long-form piece on an esports topic into different parts of your demographic profile. In other words, a broad overview might suit prospects at the top of the demographic funnel or be more appropriate in a blog. So, in other words, KISS. Remember KISS? Keep it simple, stupid. So make sure as you're building your site or building your esports website or your team or your marketing campaign or your consumer engagement, that you always keep in mind the demographic profile you are aiming for and provide content specifically for that demographic. Now, modular content is, in fact, the current approach to marketing. So creating this type of content means building content from bite-sized chunks of information. Again, they can be ordered and curated according to the audience, the channel, and the use case. And it's the way for marketers to produce loads of content without losing precious time. Reuse, you want to be able to reuse. And it's the way for sales teams to present each prospect with a personalized resource. Okay? This is where customer engagement, you might as well say customer customization engagement. So modular content is a super efficient way of generating a lot of content. And it can be tailored for individual use cases, audiences, and channels. Now, we're all familiar with the increasing demand for marketing to prove return on investment while producing personalized content. And to do this under tight time constraints, Well, modular content creation is a time-saving strategy in which to precisely do this. In which to do what? To market to prove ROI because of producing personalized content for your specific audience. Okay, now let's get real nerdy. Okay, now real nerdy. If you need to get like a Dr. Pepper, go get a Dr. Pepper. You need a Mountain Dew, go get a Mountain Dew. But we've got to talk about semantic web building blocks. And at the very least, when this class is over, I just want you to know these terms. Because when you're dealing with your programmers, you're going to hear these terms, and it'd be good to know what they mean. First and foremost is RDF. That is Resource Description Framework. Now, it's an XML-based standard knowledge representation format for exchanging arbitrary information. The key acronym there is XML, and I'm going to get into XML later. In fact, for many of you, it's going to be sufficient when you're working with your programmers and all that, and you're talking about what you want to have built. If they say something like, well, I can build that using XML, and you'll be going, XML, that's a great choice. Okay. Next, though, you have the OWL, the Web Ontology Language. That is a standard for describing classes of objects and enabling inference. That's a coding thing. Well, odds are that you're not going to have to deal with that, but you should know what that means. And then you've got the RDF query, again, Resource Description Framework query, its rules, access, and more. And this has to do with pre-standardization and software components. Okay. Now, how does all of this work? Okay. It all begins with XML. Okay. It all begins with the extensible markup language, which then feeds the web ontology language, which then goes into the resource description framework, which also taps into what's called Sparkle. Sparkle is an RDF query language, which is a semantic query language for databases. Where Sparkle is important is that it allows for the ease of retrieving and manipulating data that is stored in resource description framework format. Okay? Trust me, if you even know these acronyms, if you're familiar with them, this will give you a lot more street cred when you're working with your developers per se. Now, XML. Let's talk about XML, because XML is sort of like the holy grail of all this. Extensible markup language. XML is a programming language commonly used by data exchange services like blog feeds. And it's used to send information between otherwise incompatible systems. So, as we said, XML stands for Extensible Markup Language. What does it do? It identifies the data and is used to store and organize data rather than specifying how to display it, like HTML tags, which are used to display the data. So extensible markup language is a flexible markup language for structured electronic documents. If you're working with a programmer and the programmer is assuring you that he or she is well-versed in XML and is able to do XML, and that trig gets ported over to OWL and then to RDF, you're in good stead, okay? Now, one way in which the world has become a lot easier and a lot less dependent on hardcore programming, where you've got to go to Carnegie Mellon and learn how to code in C++ or C#, has been the introduction of APIs. API stands for Application Programming Interface. And that's a description that should make you smile. Application Programming Interface. APIs let your product or service communicate with other products and services without having to know how they're implemented. This can simplify app development, saving time and money. You will very often hear a programmer say to you, is there an API for that? Or you may very well say, I want to do this thing. I've never seen it done before, but is there an API that would allow us to do that because it's similar to this other thing? So you definitely want to be familiar with APIs. And the good news is that APIs for a host of applications, for a host of functionality, I should say, are they're out there. They're absolutely out there. There's been a whole transformation in the back end, okay, in the back end of all of this, in the same way that you can now get an SDK, a software development kit, for practically any functionality that's out there. And that's actually, you know what that is? That's actually an extension of the Hollywood evolution, where Hollywood used to pay and have a stable of writers and a stable of directors and a stable of actors and all that, until they realized, they looked at the bottom line and they said, we're spending a fortune on all of this. We have an idea. We're not going to do it anymore. So all of a sudden, the writers were let loose, and they were told, why don't you go home and write whatever you want to write, and then you come back when you've got something and pitch it to us. And if we like it, then we'll give you some money to create a treatment. And if we like the treatment, then we may greenlight it for production. So APIs are, in many regards, similar to that. Now I want to talk about metadata. And most of what I'm going to be talking about here comes from Casey Schmidt, content manager and DAM industry expert. This dates from 21, okay? There are many types of metadata that help make sense of files and data, and thus provide valuable information. Now, by expanding one's knowledge of these different types of metadata, you increase the chances of reasonably sorting and preserving valuable data. Okay, let's just look at this slide. Metadata is important because it allows you to sort and preserve what you will perceive, whatever you perceive to be valuable data. And we're going to see instances of this later on in this lecture when we talk about video games and what we can learn from video games. Okay. An important type of metadata is descriptive metadata. Descriptive metadata refers to elements like titles, dates, and keywords. For example, when a user downloads a video file, for example, the runtime of the film would be descriptive metadata. Okay, when you go on YouTube and you inquire about something you're interested in and a suggested video pops up, more than likely you're looking at how long is this thing going to run. That's descriptive metadata. Descriptive metadata is often the most commonly referenced and utilized metadata. Why? Because it is accessible, it is visible, and it is relevant on popular file types. It's also one of the easier types of metadata to understand because it's providing basic information about things such as book titles, the author name, date, etc. I wouldn't be surprised when you click on the lecture for Module 2 here, if you're not immediately accessing the metadata going, oh my God, an hour and 10 minutes of dawn. Oh God, I better get like a drink. There's also structural metadata. Now, structural metadata gives information concerning a specific object or resource. Let's give an example. A film in a DVD format has numerous sections. Each section has a certain length of film running time, and those sections fit together into the format in a certain order. You could say that when you look at a DVD, it is a deconstruction of the editing of the original film because it is deconstructed into certain segments that are now part and parcel of that DVD. And you'll know when you suddenly fell asleep at one and you're like, oh, I need to back up, you will back up specifically to that section. Now, in a broader sense, structural metadata records information about how a particular object or resource might be sorted. So let's use the above example of the DVD. Structural metadata would inform users of the correct placement of these sections on the disc. A good example, if you do DVDs, would be the director's commentary or interviews with the actors. They always come at the end of that DVD film. Now let's look at provenance metadata. Now we'll do some Webster's dictionary. The definition of provenance is roughly the earliest known history of something. Okay, if you own real estate, it'll be the title search. Okay, Where's the original deed to this property? The original deed and its subsequent sale to this person and then to that person, that is its provenance metadata. With provenance metadata, it is most relevant when something changes or is duplicated frequently. All right, here we can talk about NFTs, but we're not going to talk about NFTs right now. What makes provenance metadata so important is it provides data about a digital file or resource's history, which helps track it over its life cycle. You know, in the old days, in the very old days of the library, when you went to check out a book, I guess Don's a dinosaur, let's admit it, right? You would go there and they would have a stamp and it would have a date on it. And they would open the back of the book because there was a little card there, and they would pull out the card and they would stamp the date it was due back. And if you looked at that card enough, you could see the provenance metadata when that book was first acquired by the library, who was the first one to check it out, and the history of it being checked out. This is one of the reasons why, what is that thing on about cars? Fox, Fox, where you get the vehicle identification number, right? The VIN. The VIN doesn't lie. So every time that car is sold, that car is in an accident, that car is rebuilt, a notation is made in the history of that VIN. And that's one of the reasons why being able to access the provenance metadata of a car through its VIN is very important. Now, there's also use metadata. Use metadata is data that is sorted each time a user accesses and uses a specific digital piece of data. Use metadata is gathered in a clear and direct attempt to make potentially helpful predictions about a user's future behavior. Use metadata might be, from a marketing perspective, the most valuable of all metadata, okay? To demonstrate, consider a fictional bookstore that has been confused by the fluctuating sales of a book titled The Summer Breezes Beautified. Now, it's use metadata that would tell the bookstore owners how many copies they sell each year, when customers are buying the book, including which weekday of the month and the time of day, and which books were purchased, if any, within the same transaction by the same customer. Now, why is all this use metadata important? For the following reason. This information can reveal that The Summer Breezes Beautified is selling most when the weather outside is warmer. They might also make sales more often in the morning and daytime than at night. They could use this type of information to rearrange their store based on this data, and encourage the patterns they find out about specific book sales. Who uses metadata the best? Amazon. Okay, Amazon has taken use metadata to the stratosphere. Okay, which is why if you buy one thing there, boom, they are on top of you, letting you know what other people have bought that are also interested in your particular topic. Then there's administrative metadata. Okay, administrative metadata. Administrative metadata informs users which types of instructions, rules, and restrictions are placed on a file. Now, this type of data helps administrators limit access to files based on the user qualifications. For example, adult content. All right. Adult content is, if you're not 18 years of age, you better not use this. And in some countries, if you're not 18 years of age, you can prove it, you cannot access it. So administrative metadata is comprehensive. It's giving information about certain data as a whole from start to finish. And this gives users a chance to administer a wide variety of data files. So bottom line is, administrative metadata is like a basic version of a piece of data. Even if a particular data set is extremely complex, the metadata will be much more detailed. Consequently, administrative metadata is about control, controlling these complex pieces and simplifying them for clarity, which is one of the reasons why when you look at a streamer's stream on Twitch or Facebook or YouTube or what have you, the rules, the instructions for what's acceptable, what's not accessible are right there and in the bottom, usually underneath the live screen. Okay, moving on very quickly here, jumping from topic to topic, let's talk about esports leagues and how they are not the electronic version of sports leagues. Okay, very important because many of you may be doing this as part of sports management program, and there's a desire or an impetus to simplify esports by saying, oh, it's just like the NFL, it's just like FIFA, it's just like MLB, NBA. It's not. It's its own particular animal, which is why taking this course is extremely relevant, even if you don't expect to pursue a career in esports, because it's showing you examples and different ways of organizing for-profit entities. So let's start with traditional sports. In traditional sports, there really are basically just two core league models. The first is a decentralized league. Okay, examples of a decentralized league. Well, let's go with the PGA, right? The PGA Tour. Let's look at the International Tennis Federation, or let's look at NASCAR. Now, under this model, under the decentralized league model, there are a number of independently operated events that use a common rule system that is administered by a regulatory body, for example, the PGA. In most cases, these events wrap together under a broader league table. Usually that's done by ascribing points to a select events. And these lead to culminating marquee events, for example, the Masters, with participants chosen based on the league table or other related systems. So it is still a league, but there's a great deal of decentralization that allows for independent activities, independent tournaments, special events, things of that nature. Again, International Tennis Federation, the PGA, NASCAR, examples of decentralized leagues. Centralized leagues, now we got to look at Major League Baseball, National Football League, NBA, NHL, you name it. Centralized leagues such as the NBA or MLB or NFL, these are the thing that is pervasive is that all matches and tournaments in a league are managed by a core body that defines everything from rules to schedules and compensation, and both collects the majority of revenues and sets and enforces guidelines on the rest. And at the extreme, we can see globally centralized leagues, which are, in fact, esports is, I think, leading the way in globally centralized leagues, but we'll talk about that later, okay? So when you're talking about baseball, football, basketball, hockey, there is a league that is in charge of basically everything. Now, in soccer, for example, FIFA does not oversee a single league, unlike the NBA, but it effectively oversees all leagues, conferences, and organizations in the sport. So while member organizations manage their day-to-day operations, FIFA owns all the rules and administrates inter-party decision-making. Okay? Good. Okay. Esports is different. While we see leagues across each of the aforementioned models, all competitive play in esports is ultimately dependent on the game's publisher. Most simply, individual leagues, events, tournaments, whether for or not for profit, do not have the right to operate, let alone have the right to broadcast to at-home audiences. They really are only supposed to do so if allowed explicitly or tacitly by a publisher. And we'll be getting into how you can a publisher can tacitly allow it. All it takes is a publisher's copyright claim, a cease and desist order from their attorneys, or policy change to shut you down. And this is true even if the games are played online via location connections too. And certainly in the case of remote online play, all gameplay is ultimately administered or refereed by the publisher's online services. This means the publishers are effectively co-running the tournament or league that you're promoting or engaged in, even if you aren't aware of it. Okay? This is the major difference between esports and traditional leagues. Why else is this important? And that's because publishers take up to 50% of revenue directly attributed to their esports leagues. Now let's really delve into the weeds here. This means that after buying a franchise fee from a publisher, let's say $20 million to buy an original Overwatch franchise, the teams effectively, but not literally, pay a royalty back to the publisher. This is the reverse of the NBA example, in which the league collects revenues in order to allocate it to the teams. It isn't the business, nor a profit-seeking one. It operates for the owners. In esports, the league body collects all revenues, then keeps the largest share of it before allocating the residual to the teams. Okay? Now let's use Activision Blizzard, because it's still the largest US game company. The 50-50 revenue share occurs after the publisher recoups its own esports costs. That's fairly normal. That's basically what you would find in a Broadway show or even in a movie or a TV show. Only then, only after recouping its initial investment, does the money go to the teams who hope to cover their own costs. Worse still, the teams have no control over this center office spending. So a league can decide to spend an extra $100 million on season marketing or other expenses, all of which will be immediately recouped out of the league revenues at the expense of team revenue shares, and at their sole discretion, and with their games or their IP benefiting from the added budget. Now, this is one of the reasons why esports leagues are in trouble. They are in trouble. OWL, the Overwatch League, is in trouble. The new Call of Duty League in Brazil that just opened was created with very different structure than Call of Duty franchises before it. And that's because what the publishers are realizing is that they are demanding so much money upfront from the investor that they're really limiting the ability of that investor to really run an operation that at the very least breaks even and at best makes a profit for the investor and the shareholders. Okay? Now, at a broader level, it's important to emphasize that matches can only be played with the rules, the options, the gameplay, the physics, the items, and characters that the publisher offers. This is important because, again, the publisher owns the game. And when we talk about a game like League of Legends, there's 140 different champions that you could be. Or if you're looking at Dota, I think you'd be heroes or what have you. So they can change things whenever they feel like it. So, for example, if your favorite hero is removed from the current version of the game, you can't use them. If you've loved a limited time event that's no longer offered, too bad. If a rule, an item, or a map changed, you have no choice but to adapt it, because you can't run Call of Duty with Activision Blizzard. You can only play the specific versions of Call of Duty they allow. And we've seen how responsive they are, because the brand new Overwatch franchise, the new season of the Overwatch League, has a new version of Overwatch, Overwatch 2. And that is because they found a lot of problems with Overwatch 1, the original one, which made it kind of redundant, kind of boring, and what have you. And now the Overwatch League, the franchise league, can only use Overwatch 2. And I'm not even sure if that's even been made available to the general public yet. I know that beta versions were. But take a look at NBA 2K. If we look at NBA 2K, NBA 2K, you can play it but you have to customize and make your own player, your own athlete, because you still can't, except for a special mode, you still can't use existing real life NBA players. Okay. Now, esports leagues and tournaments are really popular. Okay. Really popular. Let's take a look at the most popular tournaments. Okay. And there's been some interesting changes here. If you look at the M4 World Championship, this is all about Mobile Legends Bang Bang World Championship. Now, this was the first edition of the game to be held in Indonesia. Previously, Malaysia and Singapore held the first 3 editions of the play. M1 in Kuala Lumpur and M2 and M3 in Singapore. What is significant about this is that when we take a look at where the market is, the growing market is for esports, guess what pops up? Southeast Asia. Okay, Southeast Asia. Southeast Asia is who? It is the Philippines, it is Vietnam, it is Indonesia, it is Malaysia, it is Singapore. And you have to realize that we're not talking small numbers of people. I mean, Indonesia, in fact, is the largest Muslim country in the world. You know, we're very often we're thinking about the Middle East, but Indonesia has got the largest Islamic, religious following of any country in the world. And the same thing we're starting to find with the Middle East. All right, you've got United Arab Emirates, you've got Saudi Arabia that are going big time into esports. So M4, which is Bang Bang World Championship, and notice it's mobile, right? Mobile. Okay, that was for this time period number 1, followed by the league championship for League of Legends winter of 2023, Blast Premier Spring 23. Okay. Now, interesting about that took place between June 7th and 11th in Washington, D.C. And again, it's using Blast. Okay. Blast is a modern shooter game about destroying enemy spacecraft, collecting power-ups, and protecting your planet from invasion. Followed by the League of Legends championships in Korea. So you can see here how with esports, it's a rapidly moving target, which is one of the things I love about it, okay? So North America League of Legends Championship Series. Again, to assure you that you made the right choice, let's take a look at the global esports management software market. Global esports management software market is going to go up from 870 million in 2019, projected to be basically 3.9 billion by 2027, with a compound annual growth rate of 21%. That is astounding. But notice we're talking about esports management software. And this is understandable when you take a look at our own country, okay, where 2 in 5 Americans say they've watched an esports event. 26% of Americans say they're more interested in esports than traditional sporting events. 1 in 4 frequently watch esports events. 30% of Americans say they're more interested in streaming video game footage, such as esports tournaments and let's play videos, than streaming films and TV. And 76% of Americans report that they play video games. So watching video games is another favorite pastime of the nation, with 70% of gamers also watching game content. Game content comprised of esports tournaments, live streams, let's play videos, gaming tutorials. So while in fact the world is tuning into esports, let's not diminish the enthusiasm and growth we see here in the United States. Okay. Once again, the esports market by 2030 is estimated to be enormous. Okay, enormous. And where is that money coming in? Media rights. You'll see how media rights continues to grow ever so slowly. Publisher fees remains fairly constant. Advertising, somewhat, well, no, that's merchandise. That's merchandise and tickets. That, I think that's going to grow because we're going to have a lot more on live, in-person LAN events. But you'll notice advertising also continues to grow. and sponsorship continues to grow and grow. Again, for the same reasons that Amazon bought Twitch, they want your eyeballs. And while I still think being able to promise or promulgate or prophesy 20% compound annual growth rate is a little bit much, the fact is the arrow is pointed in the right direction. Okay? Now, let's talk about money. Esports statistics you should know. Okay? The top 5 esports games based on most prize money. This is on prize money. Number 1 is Dota 2. And number 1 is Dota 2 because it is number 1 in China. China's got 1.5 billion people. It's communist in name only. They are the biggest capitalists around, and they crave prestige. And so they are willing to pamper and reward their top esports players. And you'll notice that they award twice as much money as any other top esport game, followed then by Counter-Strike Global Offensive, CSGO, at 110 million, Fortnite at 100 million, LOL at 82 million, okay? And StarCraft, it's one of the originators of it all, at 35 million. The esports industry growth drivers: continued social distancing. Yeah, actually, I mean, remember, you play it online or you play it in a PC bong. The growth of online streaming platforms. In fact, what did I say the last week? There's a new kid in town called Kick that's trying to take viewership away from Twitch, YouTube gaming, and Facebook. And increased esports investments by big brands. We have a lot more traditional companies that are sponsoring esports, which is raising the interest therein. And again, it remains very much a thing for 16 to 34-year-olds, although as they age, I don't see them losing any interest in esports or gaming. And as they start to have children, they're going to share with them the joy of playing video games, okay? Now, what are the most watched esports channels on Twitch? Of course, again, Twitch is number 1, right? Number 1 in terms of viewership. And what we see here is that it's a combination of teams, okay, as well as tournaments. So you've got everything from, the League of Legends Championship Korea to Riot Games generic, to Valorant generic, to the League Championship for League of Legends in America. And you can see here that in all of these, the peak viewers are pretty significant, okay? And this is ranked by hours watched based on live esports broadcasts throughout the year. No reruns included. And boy, isn't that significant for today with the writer's strike in Hollywood, where the only thing you're getting is reruns. In fact, I like to get the noon news here in Pittsburgh, and that right before it is The Price is Right. So I always catch like the last 10 minutes of Price is Right, before the news. And today it was all about pregnant women who were contestants. And then it turned out this was the Mother's Day show. And I'm like, well, let's see, it's August, whatever it is, and it's the Mother's Day show. Yep, we're into reruns. Okay. Now, esports tournaments. The great thing about esports tournaments is that they have really solidified and continued to grow all over the country. There's the Big South, there's the Big West, there's America East, okay? There's the Mid-Atlantic, there's Southland Conference. But the great thing about esports tournaments is really how attractive they are. So in the most popular esports tournaments in 2021, what did we see here? The Free Fire World Series tournament in Singapore, which related to previously, right? 5.4 million viewers, okay? Then you had the Mobile Legends, and that one again was the Bang Bang World Championship. This again is a brand new game, a brand new game that came out there. And the Bang Bang World Esports Championship was for teams worldwide who were facing off against each other to become the champion for Mobile Legends. And you'll also notice what is here, PUBG, Player Unknown Battleground, PUBG, also mobile. And so for those of you that are thinking about anything related to esports or business or just general business, mobile is going to win. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. Mobile is going to win, okay? Now, on a collegiate level, we have the National Association of Collegiate Esports that is based in Kansas City, Missouri. Michael Brooks is the CEO of it. And NACE is literally the collegiate esports governing body, you could say, governing body. It's governing body in that it sets specific rules and all that. But it has branched out because from being a governing body is one thing, but the excitement in esports are the competitive nature of it. And so NACE has expanded to the point where it is teamed up with Nerd Street, right? Nerd Street based in Philadelphia. It's teamed up with CSL Esports, and it is now making a slew of tournaments available to its member schools. And in light of the variety of the member schools, these tournaments are available at different levels of play, everything from open to challenger to varsity. Now, you'll notice when I talk about collegiate and college esports management, I'm not mentioning the NCAA, all right? The NCAA to date has wanted nothing to do with esports, and it boggles the mind. I'm very good friends with the individual who did a study for the NCAA to tell them why it was time to get into this, and this was 3 years ago. And the NCAA just could not wrap its head around this. And a lot of it had to do with Title IX, because esports attracts primarily a male audience, but also a lot of it was just traditional resistance that any sort of a game played on a computer that only involves your fingers is not a true sport. And you know what, NCAA? Go ahead and maintain your stance, because the chinks in the armor are showing. You now have NCAA Division I schools that are saying, screw this. We know that the students are interested in this. We know that there's prestige in this. We know that there's sponsorship in this. So all of a sudden, you've got University of Utah, which is getting very much involved in esports. You've got Boise State University in Idaho, which is getting involved in this. You've got University of California, Irvine, which is knee-deep in esports. And so eventually the NCAA is going to have to deal with this. Now, in the same way that I told you that APIs have made life so much easier from a programming perspective, the same thing can be said about esports software. For example, you want to launch a successful esports tournament, have we got the software for you? And this is Inori, which is good luck, okay? You can download that, and it will put together an esports tournament outline for you, right? Because when it comes down to it, tournament structure is pretty obvious, okay? You know, it's either going to be, round robin, or it'll be, player versus player. We're going to be getting into all of this later, okay? So the bracketing that occurs, all of this it's not rocket science, and there's software to help you do it. Now, University of California, Irvine, remember I said they were really into esports? This is really into esports, okay? I mean, this is everything from my challenges to challenges that are available to their students, to upcoming challenges. What's the prize? Brilliant, brilliant. I mean, if you want to see a school that has done it right, University of California, Irvine has done it. And the same thing applies to MOBAs, right? To multiplayer online battle arenas like Fortnite, okay? UCI has actually got a physical plant as well as an online MOBA arrangement, so that it can take advantage of those who are interested in MOBA games. okay? Good news for you, there are sites specifically to tell you about the best gaming website templates that are out there. Here's the 10 best gaming website templates. That's Has Themes. This was a different company. And to give you an example of the company that I'm part of, this is InVen, okay? This is InVen Global. And this is a template that was built in Korea years ago, okay, years ago. And to build this required a lot of programmers, all right, a lot of designers, a lot of sweat equity, a lot of investment, where the fact of the matter is, you can now download these templates. It's right there for you. So you want to become a producer of video games and put tournaments together? It's right there for you. Here's another one, Game Addict, all right? Create and manage team matches, okay? Here's Good Games, Game Portal template. Good Game again. Folks, it's out there for you. Esport website template designs. Here's another one that's out there for you. And again, another one. And I'm doing all this to say that it's a lot easier than it's ever been to create an esports team, to manage an esports team, and to promote tournaments. And so much of this goes under the heading of what's called SaaS, software as a service, because everything we just talked about is software as a service, okay? And that's all part of the esports, the GG Circuit esports ecosystem, okay? So GG Leap is another company that is willing to sell you soup to nuts, all right? GG Leap is a cloud-based management software for esports arenas, for LAN centers, for universities, for retail kiosks, and more. And the more is, if you sign up with GG Leap, you will get on each one of your game PCs a slew of games that are ready to play, right? And it operates on a very much like a coin basis, all right? Average of 76.7 prizes redeemed per day. And so if GG Leap is soup to nuts, and this is an example of League of Legends, why I have that. Oh, I know why. Because we talked about all this metadata, right? Well, when you take a look at a game like League of Legends, keeping track of all these motions, all these activities, all these attacks, all these repulses, I admire League of Legends players that they're able to do this in their brain. But I also know that the computer is keeping track of this. And a good example is the metadata that goes into categorizing how well a particular player performs, and as a means of predicting overall popularity here. So here we've got, and notice it's about winning probability. That's because, folks, it's only a matter of time before gambling comes to esports. Okay, the HyperX Arena in the old Luxor Hotel in Las Vegas is esports gambling, okay? So here you can see total deaths. This comes from a basic API, all right? As a challenger, as a master, as a diamond, a platinum, a gold, worthless deaths per minute, okay? Total kills, basic API, smart kills per minute. And all of this is designed to help you figure out which player is going to perform best in a particular match as part of a particular team with the probability of winning. Is this complicated? Yes, it's complicated. But if the goal, for example, is betting, if the goal is, in fact, to garner a crown and all that, this metadata is very important. And it's really nothing new, because horse racing, there's been the racing form since the early years of the 20th century, where they track everything about a horse, his times, his training, where he finished, where he began in post position, who was the jockey, et cetera, et cetera. That's like an early example. And of course, now we see in traditional sports, I mean, baseball, I mean, I've been a baseball fan my entire life, but I'm hard pressed to keep track of all the analytics, the performance data that's coming out, and how it is, in fact, changing the game. Okay? So what you saw here is what's called extractable optical tracking data for League of Legends grouped by category. So the category, game state, minutes played, the alive dead status and health of turrets, inhibitors, monsters, champion health. You can read this. It's the game state, it's the resources, it's the statistics, it's the damage, and it's the location. And these are all the independent variables that go into creating a chart like this. Okay? Now let's do a comparison. Optical tracking has become available in recent years to traditional sports, and it's part of the journey from data to actionable results, okay? And this is because there's more open data and code. Now, in line with that advantage, one of the major contributions of research is the open source resources provided. Let's look at basketball. In basketball, optical tracking data consists of player and ball locations only. Even basic actions such as dribbles, passes, and shots need not be inferred, which is sometimes a straightforward process, depending upon how they're moving, and sometimes not. But the more useful actions, such as picks and screens, or cuts or post-up position, those are notoriously difficult to determine from raw location data. In esports, on the contrary, we have not only raw location information, but we have the actions as well. We know who attacked whom, with what ability, for how much damage, who else was nearby, what buffs, levels, items, and offensive and defensive stats did each champion have, which were wards placed, and what vision was available, etc. Now, with all of that information, one can access important and actionable information virtually immediately. So while basketball gives you some data, it's not giving you anywhere near the amount of metadata that esports is giving you. Okay? Here, let's take a look. This is the placement and state of wards, where wards were placed to provide vision, coded to indicate the type of ward in its fate. This is League of Legends. Whether it expired, was replaced or destroyed, or persisted until the end of the game. Here you have a color star map, right? This is the map showing the position, the main locations a player occupied. So in this case, what are we able to discern? It was clearly a player in the mid lane of League of Legends who roamed bottom a few times and to the Baron pit before finally pushing through to the Nexus. Okay? So we can see here how that particular individual managed the game, and managed the game in a way that when finally they were ready to invade, they made it through and captured the enemy's Nexus. So you can see here where data analytics, understanding metadata, is very much going to be part of your job. Okay, gang, thanks. Sorry, it was a lot of technical stuff. Hopefully I can convey to you through my presentation what you should know, what is important, etc. Okay, thank you very much, and I'll see you next week.